On March 7th, we gathered on the playground of George Washington Carver home, and led by John Lewis and Hosea Williams came down Broad Street and over that Edmund Pettus Bridge and met a wall of policemen. And that line stopped. John Lewis asked permission to pass. The policeman said there would be no march between Selma and Montgomery. You have 2 minutes to disperse and go back to your church. In 1 minute and 15 seconds, they attacked. Now, I had never experienced violence. As I told you, marching was fun to me. I liked the spirit of the movement, the songs, the chants, being with my friends, not going to school. You know, I liked all of that. When I crested that bridge and I could see across, I saw those policemen lined all the way across all 4 lanes. The service road was filled with police cars and policemen on horses. I knew we were not going to Montgomery. When that line stopped, I was too far back to hear or see what was happening. I didn't need to. I was a warrior. I knew the procedure. I knew that when John Lewis and Hosea got to that line of policemen, one of them would ask permission to pass. It would be denied. John and Hosea would go down on their knees. One of them would say a prayer. We would get up and they would lead us back to where we started from. We either plan a new strategy or just regroup and come right back. I'm standing there waiting for the front to go down when suddenly I hear gunshots and screams. I thought they were killing the people down front. Before we could turn to run, it was too late. They came in from both sides, the back and the front, and they were just beating people. Old, young, black, white, male, female, it didn't matter. They were just beating people. People lay everywhere, not moving, bleeding, and you couldn't stop to help them, or you'd be beaten too. The gunshots I heard, nobody was shooting guns, bullets on the bridge that day. It was the tear gas canisters being shot into the crowd. Tear gas burns your eyes, gets in your lungs, you can't breathe, you can't see, you panic. Oftentimes you run right back to the same people you're running from. You could outrun those men on foot. You couldn't outrun the ones on horses. Poor horses were afraid. They were riding the horses right into the crowd. People were being trampled, bones were being broken. It was horrible. It seemed like it lasted forever. The last thing that I remember on that bridge that day is seeing this horse and this lady. And I don't know what happened. Did the horse run over her? Did the man riding the horse hit her? I do know, as I stand here, 50 years later, I can still hear the sound her head made when it hit that pavement. The next thing I remember, I was on the city side of the bridge in the back of a car. My head was in my sister Linda's lap, and Linda was crying. When I became fully awake, I realized what was falling on my face were not my sister's tears. It was her blood. My 14-year-old sister had been beaten on that bridge and had wounds in her head that required 28 stitches. Yet on that following Tuesday, March 9th, we followed Dr. King across that bridge. I held that same sister's hand. When I crested that bridge and I could see across, I'm not ashamed to tell you I didn't want to go in freedom. I saw those same policemen lined up under those traffic lights all the way across all 4 lanes. They were on both sides. Whatever the cost of this freedom was too much for this 11-year-old. I tried to go back. My sisters wouldn't let me. They kept talking. Finally, I remember one of them saying, "Come on, they're not gonna beat Dr. King." I went, but I was scared. This time, Dr. King asked permission to pass. The police told him the same thing. There would be no march between Selma and Montgomery. But this time the front went down. He knelt down and Dr. Abernathy said a prayer. After prayer, Dr. King stood up and led us back to Brown Chapel, where he told us he had applied for a court order that would give us the legal right to walk from Selma to Montgomery if we so wanted to, but more importantly, be protected. It was signed on March 17th by a judge in Montgomery named Frank Johnson. And on March 21st, we left Brown Chapel one more time, came over that same Edmund Pettus Bridge, and those same policemen who beat us up had to protect us all the way from Selma to Montgomery. It took 5 days. 5 days of walking. There are no motels between Selma and Montgomery today. There were none then. Everything had to be brought. Nobody turned around, they kept going. And August 6th of that very same year, 50 years ago today, that Voting Rights Act was signed. And it removed those obstacles that prevented us from voting. In Dallas County, which Selma is the county seat, we went from 250 African Americans on the roll out of a possible 15,000 eligible black voters to 9,600 almost immediately. And it still took us 36 years to get rid of the same man that served with George over there, George Wallace. Can't get over there. It's like, what? It's not just good enough to go register. It's not even just good enough to vote. We found that out early. Even though you walked in, you got that right to go put your mark by who you want to vote for. Change didn't come fast. She said, mighty rivers are filled drop by drop. If you add your drop and your drop and your drop to that mighty river of change, we'll have it. And in the immortal words of Dr. Martin Luther King, then we will be free. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we'll be free at last.